What if I told you that most businesses don't fail because of bad ideas, but because they try to scale too fast? What if I told you that big consulting firms, McKinsey, Deloitte, aren't actually more efficient, they're just better at charging more? And what if I told you that the biggest mistake most founders make is the one they don't even see coming? Today, I sat down with Matt Lentzner, the founder and CEO of Bizinta, and he built a business by fixing the very problem that kills most professional service companies. Today, we're talking about why consultants struggle to grow, why most founders waste money at the start, and how AI is completely changing the game for businesses that rely on the billable hour. If you run a consulting business, you're scaling a team, or you just want to understand the hidden forces shaping the modern economy, this episode is for you. Let's get into it.
I grew up in California in a town called Livermore. My father worked at the lab there. There's a famous radiation lab there where they design bombs. I know it's kind of creepy, but all my friends and their parents were all physicists and everything. And so I got into technology really at a young age. I have a degree in physics, so I was kind of following along. And then I went into the military. So I'm a veteran. I was in the infantry of all things, like they put the physicist guy in the infantry. And so it just, all of these experiences sort of brought me to going into consulting. I had my own company for a while, but that was kind of a struggle. And then I worked for a company called Rose Ryan, and I was their IT manager, sort of their technology guy. And while I was there, I started to notice how much difficulty they were having with just running their business. And professional services companies, I think, struggle a lot. It's a little opposite to a regular company where you have to make an investment and maybe buy parts and get a factory and like do a design. And so there's a big hump at the beginning, and then you scale from there, and then your incremental costs go down the more widgets you make, right? But then professional services is the opposite. Like anybody can say, oh, I want to be a consultant, hang up a shingle and start doing it. But then when they start growing, it actually, each person you add, it's not linear. It gets more and more complicated. And so that was the problem that I was seeing, is that they weren't able to schedule their consultants and know who was doing what and where. They were spending a ton of time collecting time and then getting the billing. And then it was like a multi-day process. And then there were still mistakes and everything. So I had this background. It was a strange thing where I had all the different elements of the background to be able to address this problem. I had the technical background. I had some experience programming, and then sort of the organizational background of just being in the military and seeing what that was like. And so I started working on the system, and we called it DTS at the time, which stood for Dream Team System. And then it just kept growing. And at some point, Kathy, who's one of my co-founders now for Bizinta, people kept asking her because she could like just fire off this information about the company. And they're like, where are you getting this from? She's like, oh, I'm getting it from the Dream Team System or whatever. And then people kept asking, and they're like, we need to see this. And then we started showing it. Next thing you know, like people are asking us how much it costs, and we hadn't even thought about that yet. So then we spun this company off. And here I am, right? So I became the CEO, and I had to start from like ground zero because I was like a technical guy. And so it's been years and years. We started sort of officially in 2017, of course, taking software that was built as an internal system, way different than commercial software. There's like 10 times as much stuff that you have to do. And so that was a long process, but here I am now on podcast talking about it. So we just keep building on the success that we're having and adding more features and everything. And, that traction is sort of incrementally keeps coming up.
So what did you experience in the early days? Because I've been around quite a few startups, and it's always kind of a chaotic, fun, but terrifying environment sometimes. So what would you say was your biggest challenge early on that you faced and maybe taught you about how to proceed later on?
That's a good one. There's actually many. I've been doing this long enough. I've gone through a few phases of that even. So I did get a huge advantage relative to my peers because I had a company sponsoring me right from the beginning. So I basically came already with like the incubator. I had an office, and and someone was paying my salary and everything, so I could work on it. So that was awesome. I highly recommend that to anybody if you can manage that. So that whole struggle of like, oh, I have to work for no money, and I don't even know if I'm going to end up with a product at the end of this. So I was able to do that. But then the very next step, I would say things started to get difficult. So something I did was I wasted a ton of money at the beginning, which I think happens. I had to learn the hard way. I was just reflecting on this actually a couple of days ago. It's like, even though I'm further along and I have, I'm paying customers and everything, I've been in this for a few years, I'm paying way less in services than I was before when I started, because I keep figuring out how to do things cheaper. So I got pretty far. I started with a product that was already kind of figured out, and I hired some engineers to sort of, flesh it out more. But the go-to-market continues to be the challenge. And every startup I talk to, that's the thing. That's sort of the thing you have to accomplish to be successful. And for me, it's been a really incremental process. Like, it didn't automatically click. Like, I'm still working on it. I just had a big meeting with our advisor to try and continue to refine our messaging and everything. So the speed of sales is not where I would want it to be. As far as being a business person, that's my biggest weak point, is marketing. So to me, it's like there's build the product, which I'm like super comfortable with, and I was the original engineer. And then it's all this touchy-feely stuff, on the marketing
Yeah.
side. Like, how do I connect?
I think the core of it, though, is really the product and the retention. If you have good retention and a good product, that's the foundation, because you can crank all the campaigns you want and burn through the whole market. And if your churn is high, that's it. Like, you don't have a successful foundation to hold on to all the people you're acquiring, and your reputation starts to slip, and it's like a big snowball. So I think the biggest thing is really making sure that you have a good product, you have good product market fit, that your customers are happy with what you're working on, but you're also still innovating, you're still talking to customers, and you're still finding out where you can improve. So I think if you're on that track, which it seems like you guys are still very much involved with innovating and customer first approach, I think that's really the best start for any marketing strategy.
So we've been killing that from the beginning. We have super high multi-year contracts. I think, only lost one customer because they weren't satisfied with the product. Here's the thing. It's super sticky, right? So we come in and like replace basically all the operation systems. Like, we're going to be your timesheet. We're going to be your scheduling system. We're going to be your billing system, like all this kind of stuff. And so once they're in, it's really ours to lose at that point, because, they're really invested in the system. But that has a downside also, in that, people know that they're taking a big risk. Like, I'm going to like take all of this stuff and put all of my eggs in this one basket. If it doesn't work, it's really going to be difficult for me. And so the risk that people feel from knowing that makes it hard to just sell. If you're selling, like, I don't know, like rubber gloves or something, like if they stink, you would throw them away and then go buy a different brand, right? But with us, we're like asking you to marry you, right? And not
Yeah.
like a Las Vegas wedding. Like, we're going to spend 30K on the wedding and all your family's going to be there and everything. So you got to be really sure that this is the right fit for your company. And the level of credibility that we have to have, and comfort and customer service, is really high to get over that hump. So it's a high initial investment even for us as selling it. And then, and we have a long-term relationship with that customer. All of our customers are either like, this is good, or this is amazing. Like, I don't even ask people for testimonials, and they'll just say, Bizinta is like so easy to use. I love it, or whatever. I go into this recording tool and I can be in there in an hour and just look up anything I want and see what's going on. So I'm always like, why aren't people like, they should be beating down my door, right? Like, we want to buy this. I would say there's two reasons we lose deals. One is that people are like, oh, like, we want to go with an Oracle product or something, we feel like that's safe. That feels safe to us. Or they're just like, yeah, we know our systems aren't very good, but it's not the right time for us to switch or whatever. So those challenges just continue to bedevil us, I guess. Literally, like, you could talk to any of our customers, like, just pick one, I'll put you in touch with them, and I know they're going to say good things about it. I don't know. Maybe they don't believe. Maybe they think it's some sort of trick or something. I guess.
What would you say to those people who are on the fence and maybe there's just misconceptions or they don't have all the information? What could you tell them that you think they need to know?
That's like the $10 million question. Like our system does so much stuff. Like boiling that down to like something easy for people to understand has been a challenge. And I think that that's probably what hurts us. I guess what I would say now is like, do you really want to just keep taking money and burning it, with what you're doing? Do you really want to spend, $60 a month on each person, just to do their scheduling? Because that's what it's costing you, with the amount of time that your staff is spending.
I guess you could kind of approach it as what is the outcome that everyone is happy that they get when they join with you? If you could sum that up, but what would that be?
So there's two things. One thing is just the efficiency and the time that they get back. And I'm always saying, look, I'm not trying to eliminate anybody's job. What I'm trying to do is elevate everybody's job. Like instead of doing administrative stuff, you could be doing much higher value work, right? It's more that you would enjoy more and is more valuable to the company, right? Like using your brain, not like going through and manually inputting, timesheet data from a spreadsheet that somebody emailed you. I mean, that's bananas, right? It's 21st
I agree,
century.
100%.
I know it. And we had talked earlier and you had told
Yeah.
me that story, right? About a place you had worked, right? So like that's mind numbing work. Who wants to do that, right?
And I think that's in a lot of industries, though. Like you're exactly on the money. So with AI now, right? There's so many products coming out to make things more efficient. There's like this is a interesting thing that I'm starting to notice with like the billable hour, for example. If you are refusing to use AI or technology that makes you more efficient because it reduces your billable hours, is it unethical in that case to refuse to use it because your clients are now paying you for more than what you could be? You know what I mean?
Know exactly what you mean.
It shifts the whole paradigm, the whole pricing structure of many industries that were relying on the hourly like framework has to now be, I think, reconsidered as a deliverable based or flexible based, because there's no way you either have to charge something like $2,000 per hour to meet the same income or profit that you were before on the same work because it's now so much more efficient, or you rethink the whole system. So I think there's no other way than to just start adopting these, or else you're going to fall behind. And yeah,
Well,
it's
you're
crazy.
right. And that is like the key problem with time and materials billing right there, right? The incentive is to bill more time, right? And so why would you want to be more efficient when you're passing that cost on to the customer? They pay for your inefficiency. So there's no incentive to become efficient. What we're seeing though, and what people are starting to demand now is fixed pricing, we're going to provide these services, even in consulting, right? Which is traditionally been time and materials. We're going to provide these services for this amount of money. And then your incentive is to be as efficient as possible because you make more money then. And then also the customer knows what they're going to pay, right? They don't have to worry that it's going to go double over, and then now they're stuck with that bill. But the thing with time and materials billing is it's easy. You just record your hours and you bill the people, right? You don't have to understand like, how long does this take to actually do, or, what are our products and everything? Or is the customer like adding a bunch of stuff that I didn't scope out or whatever? So if you don't have a system like Bizinta, knowing if you're making money on any given fixed project that you did is very difficult, right? How do you know? You need to know how much time you spent and who did the work and how much their cost is. And so I think these people who cling to time and materials billing are going to just be seen more and more as being behind the times, right? And so
Yeah.
you totally nailed it. You totally nailed it. That transition, we're seeing that it's happening. And even Bizinta has a way of, you can set up a fixed fee thing, but you can also do out of scope billing on that same project. So you can set up your thing and then you can say to the customer, yeah, we can do that. that's out of scope, and we charge this much per hour for
I
that
see.
work, and they
Like
can
for a
say yes
law
or no.
firm.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I guess for a law firm, they could have a fixed price on a specific contract or something. But if there's discovery or research, maybe that could be billed hourly because maybe
Exactly.
that's a more
Yeah, whatever. I
manual,
mean,
hands-on
it
thing
gives
or
it,
whatever.
yes, and it gives the customer that flexibility, right? Of like, well, yeah, I'd like you to do this since you're here, take care of it for me. And then if you're like, no, we can't do that because there's no way to bill for it. So like that blended model is probably the best thing in that. Yeah.
I also think that like the small and medium businesses are going to be the ones getting ahead now if this is the trend, because the main, I guess, leverage that larger companies had was really manpower and ability to execute, efficiency, whatever. The more people you have working for you, more output, right? But if there's tools now that are increasing efficiency and productivity to the same degree, right? You're a smaller company who can meet or almost match the output of a larger company, but using AI or whatever automation tools, you're now operating with way less overhead. Exactly like you said, the more consultants you bring on, the it's not linear profit. Like you're slowly decreasing. And so if you can operate as a small business at the same output as a larger business who's hesitant because they want to keep their billable hours intact, they're going to get completely outperformed. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Actually, can I ask you some questions?
of course.
Okay. Okay. So no, and they're rhetorical, I guess. So if you were to buy a car that was made by a small company in Italy,
Mm-hmm.
or you were going to buy a car that was made by GM, which car would you expect to be more expensive?
The small one in Italy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to buy consulting services from a small consulting company or from one of the big four, which one would you expect to pay more money for?
The big four.
Right. So the whole business model is like upside down. And I don't think that those bigger companies are more efficient. I think they're less efficient. And that's
I
why
agree.
so they charge more money because they're less efficient. They can't do it. And so what are you getting for your extra money? I think it's just like name recognition, really, or like,
I
you
agree.
know,
No one fires McKinsey or no one gets mad
right.
for hiring McKinsey. Is that I
Right.
don't know what it is, but
Something
something
or
along those
Deloitte
lines.
or whoever it
But
is,
yeah,
right? Like, yeah, if you had your audit done by, Joe's accounting firm, then everybody would be like, I'm not accepting this. But if it said Deloitte on it or McKinsey or whoever, right? Then people would feel comfortable with that. And they would have known, I guess, you paid like 3, 4, 5 times as much to get that done, right? What's crazy is when I was working at Rose Ryan, I wasn't a consultant, so I wasn't, but I would hear all these stories. I've heard all these stories, like all these terrible things that startups would do, and I was like, how can these people stay in business? I would hear these stories. So they were at a Fortune 500 company and they were there. And then there was another large consulting company, one of these big names. So I'm going to leave everybody's name out. And the big difference between those two is that large company could like mobilize way more people. Like Rose Ryan only had, X number, it was about 100-person company. So they only had a certain number of people that they could bring in. And this other company could bring in hundreds of people or whatever. They were bringing in like recent college graduates they were billing out more than what Rose Ryan was charging. And then the Rose Ryan consultants would have to like check all of their work. And so it was this crazy thing of
yeah,
like, yeah, like, wow, you get these people that have 2 or 3 years, and then they work them like slaves, right? They're working 80 hours a week, right? And actually in this particular case, they were bringing them in from Canada. I know you're Canadian, right? They were all from Vancouver. So they were flying them in from Vancouver to work at this company and charging, yeah, more per hour for their work. I want these small and medium sized consulting companies to be able to compete. And, they probably will never be able to charge as much per hour, but if they can push down their overhead and their costs, they could be, what you're talking about is right. They could be more competitive if they can take advantage of systems that allow them to scale their company.
yeah. No, I think that's so true. And like, yeah, the arbitraging of smaller like student work is so real and it's crazy. And the thing is, like, the smaller companies are the ones who have the highest interest in giving you good results because they know that their credibility isn't as high and they need good case studies. They're more motivated to help. They have smaller teams, smaller amount of clients, so obviously their attention is more directed on you. Whereas like a big company isn't going to care as much about you as a, as a
Exactly.
client.
Yeah.
And like, I guess there are cases where as a new company still figuring things out, there's a risk that maybe things slip through the cracks a little, or maybe there's someone that's just a get rich quick scheme and they're just, and those things happen and it unfortunately kind of ruins the trust and creates like a lot of that aversion to trying out new software or trying out a
Yeah.
new company because you're afraid of getting burned.
Right. Right.
Yeah. It's a big problem, but I think you're completely right on the I didn't even think about that. The car and the
Right. Right. So there's economies of scale at GM and not at Lamborghini, right? But for some reason, it's completely inverted in professional services. So it's a strange thing. So, we sort of cater to a market size. Have you ever heard of the Dunbar number? Have you heard of that concept before?
it's familiar,
Does
but
that
I
sound like
can't
vaguely
place it.
familiar? So
Yeah.
it's this idea that a person can maintain relationships with about 100 people.
Mm,
Okay. Right. That's what the human mind. And I'm a big history buff too. And like medieval villages were always about 100 people. And like when they would get too much bigger than that, people would leave and start a new village, right? Because it wouldn't work when you have to use your mind to keep track and maintain relationships with everybody. And
right.
I think that that's the problem with the consulting companies is as they approach that 100, then this whole thing of this small community where everybody knew each other, the closer they get to that number, the more it starts to break down.
Yeah.
And so you can't really like go past that number, and it's not exactly 100. It's like somewhere between, 80 or more, like you'll get different numbers from this guy. But as that starts to break down, you need a system. And so in our experiences, you can take your company to about 40 people. And then at that point, usually the owner is working like 60 hours a week just to keep things from the wheel, basically the wheels from falling off, right? And the whole thing to go into a ditch. And so we always encourage people like, you should be like, try and get ahead of this, right? Because when you hit 40, you end up in this problem where you're too busy to make a change, right? Like if you spend all day, 80 hours a week, just keeping your business running, you have no bandwidth. And we've been through this journey with a bunch of customers where, they need to hire some people to be able to make the transition. And then, so they get past 40, then they're on Bizinta, then they can grow 100, 200, 300. They can keep this going because Bizinta has all these scaling features in it also. So we have the scheduling system you need when you hit 120 people or whatever. So I think that that's kind of what the thing is like every time you hire a person, they're a unique person with unique skills.
Yeah.
And if you're a small company, one of the ways you attract people that they don't go work for a large consulting company is you can give them a human, kind of experience, right? Where they can, they can work 40 hours a week and go home and see their kids and everything. But then you end up having to hire more people. You can't you need 2 people to work 80 hours instead of 1. So then how do you scale this? And I have a study that was done that shows that the profitability of professional services companies actually goes down. It's here as they get bigger, it goes down, 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 down. And then if they can get to that upper echelon where they can like really jack up their rates, then they become even more profitable. But there's this like valley here. And that's the problem we're trying to solve is what we want to see is this, right? Like you can go up here and you just keep getting more profitable as you grow. Because if you don't get more
Yeah.
profitable, what's the point of growing, right? But if you get here and you go down into this ditch and you have no way of climbing out of it, then you either have to get smaller or you got to figure out some way to, I guess, super amounts of marketing so that people will start paying you twice what you've been charging. So there's definitely a problem there, and there's a way out of that. And the best time to do it is before, you're in there.
I mean, it seems like as a business, there's really only three problems. You're either understaffed for the amount of work you have to do,
Right.
overstaffed for the amount of work you have to do, or you're plateaued, which means you're not growing. So it's
Right.
really always a matter of which problem are you in and then adjusting accordingly. So yeah, I guess with professional service, there's it that drop off is exactly that
Right.
point where yeah.
Right. And so you end up, yeah. And as you can't invest in your company when you're not making money anymore, it's a trap, right? One of my advisors talks about all of this of like there's all these little, as your company grows, there are these little inflection points where you have to go from thinking about things this way to like working on this new thing and then something else. And then you have to be able to navigate these things. You have to make investments in staff to sort of get through that pit so that you can grow on the other side and everything. And so, and then they come fast when you're little,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Like,
true.
yeah. So you go like, there's one at 10, there's one at 25, there's one at 40, there's one at 100, right? So at the very beginning there, you have to be very agile and keep changing. So
I'm curious, is there anything you did kind of maybe early on that had like an outsized return on today's success or the long-term results?
I would say that initially we didn't realize how much of a problem billing was for people. And so we've just continually automated that and invested in that. And so we're at the point now where you can like push a button and get whatever 200 invoices out and you just have to check them and then you can mail. So we just keep automating more and more and more in ways that, and I keep adding these things and it just increases people's interest in the product. So there was that. We added something called auto pay now, which is another, I think, trend that's going to be bigger in the future, which is I send you an invoice, you have some grace period, like 7 days to like dispute it if you see something's wrong. If you don't, we already have your payment information. We just process it.
Okay.
Okay. And because collections are like just the death of everybody, right? Like everybody hates it and it's just a huge waste of time. And so this was a couple of years ago, one of our customers was like, yeah, we want to use your product, but we already have this collection system and we're not gonna switch unless we can keep it. And I was like, that looks like a pretty good idea. And so we added that to our system. We made a better version of what they had been using. And then now it took a little while because people were kind of like, peeking over like, what's going on over there, right? Now it's just a flood. Everybody wants to switch to this now because they see how efficient it is. And most of the time when you don't get paid, it's just because the other company doesn't have their act together for whatever reason, or they lost the invoice, or someone was on vacation and didn't sign for it, or whatever. So when you send somebody an invoice, in a way, you're giving them a chore to do or another task to do, right? Because they have to pay it. But as long as you have a trusted relationship with them, then don't make them have to go and like type it all in and everything. Just take the money out of their account, right? We have a partner. We provide credit card processing and ACH, and the ACH is of course way more popular because credit card fees are like 3%, but the ACH just does a electronic check for you, and like we use it. I just sit there, 7 days comes up, all this money shows up in my bank account. I'm like, that was easy. That was awesome. So yeah, so that was something I think that kept developing and then surprised me is like just how much pain people are going through just getting their bills paid.
Yeah, that's interesting because I guess even as a business, like you don't want to, it kind of makes you uncomfortable asking as well. Like you don't want to chase people. You don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
be like,
Everybody,
oh,
yeah,
by the
exactly.
way.
By the
And
way,
then
yep,
it just kind of makes you feel a little icky, even though it's agreed upon. Everyone knows it's happening, but it still
exactly,
has that
exactly.
slight discomfort. So removing any responsibility for who's asking is kind of, yeah, I see how that
Yeah,
could.
and then something else, people want to have some sort of automated way of sending reminders too for that same reason. So that's as interesting. There must be like 25 different reminders that the system sends out, like your timesheet, it's late. Your timesheet's late now. You have to do your approvals. You have to review invoices. But taking that away from a person having to do that, like it's exactly like psychologically, it's easier, right? Like the person in charge of billing isn't sending this to me. It's the system just reminding me. And also the system is relentless, right? It's going to keep going until you do what you're supposed to do. But it takes out that, you know, that bad feeling I get that's kind of on both sides. And I just had to do some collection emails. And I think they were getting maybe a little nasty sounding, whatever, like curt, I guess is what I would say. Because one of the customers like is chronically late, like every time. And so I'm just like, dude, right? And I didn't say that. I just said, this is late, please pay as soon as possible. But I'm just like, right. And then they get it and they're like, oh man, like this guy, then they're feeling like my irritation or whatever. And so that like adversely affects the relationship.
Yeah, I think that could even be like a point of retention for businesses, because billing itself is a kind of a thing that can deter people from continuing if it becomes a problem. And I spoke to actually the co-founder of this platform called Rebelia. They do like subscription sort of, but it's a bit different. They have like flexible subscription plans. And she was talking about how big of an issue bounce payments or like bad payment interactions have, bad impacts they have on businesses churn and retention, because it kind of creates like this friction unnecessarily with people who are already maybe on the fence about signing up or something, and then this just doesn't facilitate like a smooth transition. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. You just you want everything to just be chill. Right. Yes. Most software companies make you sign at least a 1-year contract, and we do everything months. And we also do dynamic billing. So we figure out how much usage you have for that month. And so if you have to cut staff or whatever, or, downsize, like you don't have to keep paying what you were paying, you would pay less. And some companies have like seasonal, like, oh, tax season, we're going to hire 50 more people, and then they're going to leave, at the end of tax season or something. So you don't have to like pay at the highest level of usage. You go month to month. And then the other thing is I never want people to feel like they're trapped, like we trap them, because, we're always trying to, get people to switch from other software to us. And they're like, well, my contract's not up until May or whatever. I have to wait till then. And I'm like, yeah, like they make it difficult. They're using like tactics and predatory practices. Like we don't ever lose customers, and they have a 30-day notice with us. They can leave whenever they want. So, why I feel like that's like putting our money where our mouth is, right? Of like, you can always leave. We're not going to force you into a multi-year contract or something. We have to win your business every single month, right? Like we can't just blow you off for 9 months. And then when we see the renewals getting close, like, oh, let's get all this stuff done for them that they wanted, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has this. I feel like that this holds me back, because like a lot of software companies have such a bad reputation of being like, being predatory and like getting people to sign all these contracts and trying to squeeze them as much as possible and everything. I'm just like, no, we're different,
But I think your results speak for themselves, because
Yes. Right.
often like if you prioritize the long-term relationship, that's where you see the most value instead of the quick win. The quick win is, I'm going to sign you up with this thing that you want, and I'm going to give it to you, but then I'm not going to let you leave, and I'm going to charge you for all the other features you don't use, and I'm going to make it
Right.
really hard to leave
Hard to
and
leave. Yeah.
my installation fee. And then it makes me as a customer like frustrated. Why am I paying for all this shit I only wanted this one feature, and now I can't even leave.
Yes.
It's just so much of a
Yeah. They
headache.
just they drive everybody crazy. Yeah. So the other thing we do is we have all of our pricing, and there's a calculator right on our website where you can see what it's going to cost. So how you go and they're like, oh, there's the free version, and then there's the beginner thing, and then enterprise, call for a quote, right? And so, and I know exactly what that conversation is, a salesperson trying to figure out, how much can I charge this person, right? Like, what are they willing to pay? How much can I like jack this up? So they're like used car salesmen almost. So for me, because I was on the other side buying these services, I set it up the way I would want to buy software. I would have wanted to buy software when I was on the other side being the IT guy. I was like, I'm not signing any long-term contracts. Don't even ask
Yeah.
me, right? Yeah.
It's like going to the store and I kind of want this thing, but there's no price tag. And then you don't want to get sucked into it. Or like they're coming up to you and they're like, how can I help you today? And it's like,
Yes,
just
right.
leave me alone. I'm going to find what I want. I'm going to look at the price and then I'm going to put it back if I don't want it. And I think
Right.
that's like, yeah, the pricing calculator lets me shop in peace without someone coming up to me and talking to me and
Right.
convincing me and making me feel pressured.
Right.
And I think
Right.
like in terms of psychology as well, people like to feel like they have autonomy over their choices. They obviously don't want to feel sold. And I think having all the information there just gives people the assurance that they're making the choice and it's not being like pushed on them. And I think that's a really
Yeah.
smart strategy.
Yeah. And there's like this information deficit or disadvantage, like they know everything and you don't. So they use that as a weapon. So the other thing we don't do is though we don't negotiate on the prices. We're like, the prices are there. If we can't convince you, right, that this is worth what we're asking, then we either haven't done a good job or this isn't the right product for you, which is totally, totally fine either way. And we know what everybody else is charging. So, they're fair, right? I had a funny story. So I had a customer I was talking to and they were like, but, this is kind of expensive. What kind of discount can you give us? And they had already talked to one of my customers. So I flipped the whole script on them. I said, did you talk to the referral we gave you? And they're like, yeah. And I said, did that person like rave and say how great this was? And they were like, yeah, they did. Right. And I'm like, well, that's what you're paying for. Right. And they turned out to be one of our biggest supporters. They love us.
Wow.
They just say how much they love us all the time. And their operations person said at the end of the year, when they were talking about what went well that year, they said it was Bizinta. That was like the best thing that they had done in a long time for their company. I love that story. And also it was like a maturing moment for me because I think I might have caved in, 2 years earlier because I was just like, oh, I'm this customer, right? I need to do whatever. But now I was like, no, it's totally it's worth way more than what you're paying for it, right? It's cheap, right? And you have evidence. You're going to love it. And you're not going to feel like you're getting overcharged once you start using it. It's going to be an amazing experience.
Yeah, maybe there's a software entrepreneur out there who's starting out. What advice would you have for them based off of these exact lessons? Because I don't think I've heard of many companies that have only one customer that's ever left. Like that's insane
Right.
retention.
Well, no, we've had more than one that's left, but one that left because of dissatisfaction.
Right. Yeah.
Right. We lost a couple customers recently because they were bought. And so there's really nothing we can do about that. One of them was just like, oh my God, they're going to make us use their system. We hate it. Right. So they were so mad. They just kept telling me, we're so sorry. We wanted to stay with you, but they're making us switch to their system and everything. Doesn't do what your system does. It's like a huge downgrade for us. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. But, okay. So the question was, what would I tell someone starting out? I guess. So it's kind of tough because I do talk to a lot of entrepreneurs. I mean, I'm in Silicon Valley, San Francisco area, right? And so I run into these people all the time, but we're not really like a VC fundable company because, I always say like the VCs they want to invest in like a moonshot kind of company. And I always describe our company as like a golden goose kind of company. It's going to just keep laying golden eggs. But if you try and like get all the eggs out at once, like the story goes, kill the goose, and then you won't have any more eggs left. So you have to like take care of this goose, right? And as it grows, it lays bigger and bigger golden eggs, right? But that business model is not VC friendly, I think. The joke I always say is if you want to get a VC, you have to say, oh, my thing is like Uber for blank, whatever it is, or for fishing, Uber for, I don't know, tires or whatever, like something. It's like if you have to put it in terms of like, it's this thing that you already know about, or maybe it's like chat, GPT for whatever thing, right? Whatever's hot at the time. I think my Uber joke is getting a little old now.
No, I've seen so many ads exactly like that. It's crazy.
Yeah. So we never had that like Uber for something, right? Where we could say that. I would say that the idea isn't what's important. It's like how much you're willing to just work on it and keep at it. So, I mean, we're like a good example of like just grinding.
Execution, yeah.
I always say, everyone asks me how it's going. I always tell them I'm turning the crank, right? Like I just got to keep going and making incremental improvements. And those are the durable ones. Some of these companies, they go up like this and then crash into the ground.
Yeah. There's a number, I think it might be the Lindy effect, or I could completely misremembering the name, but I think it's the Lindy effect where the amount of years the company's existed is like the projection for how long its
We will continue
lifespan
to
is.
exist. Yes,
Yeah. So the laundromat, it's been there forever. It's probably going to be there a lot longer. I mean, that's
exactly.
not the case for everything, but yeah, I think the ones that go high fast also can crash fast. So
Correct. Yeah. So, right. And then like hyper growth kills a lot of companies. Like they hire a bunch of people and they borrow a bunch more money. Then they hit a bump and then the whole thing just explodes. I've been in the Silicon Valley and everything for a long time. And so I've seen, and they come in waves. And I don't know if this is like a long time ago, like pets.com, like explodes, right? And then just goes out of business. And then there was grocery delivery is like super common now, but there was one early company that just blew up and went out of business and lost a bunch of money. So people pay attention to the outliers and they're like, I want to be like this company or this company. But those are like the 0.1% at the very top that they had a great idea. And a lot of times they have the idea and it turns out the timing was perfect. Like they build it and then right when they're finishing is the perfect time to launch this product. So there's just a lot of luck involved, and then they go off and it's a crazy, thing. Like probably Facebook is an example of that. And actually Uber is another example of that. They built that for limousine services originally. So you can see those companies and think that and hope that that's what's going to happen, but it's not realistic. What you do is you just keep working and working and working and working. And then you have this overnight success, but you had spent whatever, 15, 12, 10 years working on this. Maybe it was just an idea that you were working on or whatever. And so I think that's it. Like the amount of perseverance that you need, and the thinking that, if you don't hit the big time or become, the next giant company. So I love the show Silicon Valley because there was like a lot of truth to that, of just these companies. They're just always in turmoil and they're always trying to raise money and stuff. And so it's just that you have to get into it, thinking that you may have to work on this all day, every day for years, right? And because the first thing you do might not work and you have to retool and start again and then start again and start again. And then hopefully one of those iterations ends up being the right thing at the right time. And then you take off.
it seems like you really capitalize on finding the pain. Like you
Mm-hmm.
didn't come up with an idea that you thought was a good idea. I mean, in a way you did, but like some people just dream up an idea, make it, and then try to find people who might want it instead of looking at what problems people have and then trying to fix those. And I think in your case, you really did a good job of identifying exactly what people were struggling with and adapting to, like you said, the time tracking. You didn't think initially it was going to be such a big thing, but the more you dug into it, that's what really took off. And I think from everything I've seen, the most successful companies are the ones that keep up with the actual pain points of their customers and like the existing pain. They're not bending reality. They're not trying to change the perception of their company to get a VC to fund them. They're trying to meet with the reality where it is, if that makes sense, which I think is what you guys did.
Yes. And I think that's a really good point. I felt like I was a subject matter expert in the problems that these kind of companies have, right? And I was also lucky that I had that technical background also. I was on the management team, so I know exactly what problems the managers have. I built a system to solve those problems. And as it turns out, there's lots of companies that struggle with that same problem. So it's really about knowing the business problem that you're trying to solve and understanding it. So that's probably the most important knowledge that you need, is like the domain knowledge of what this set of customers, wherever they are. And there's all sorts of software products that aren't really particularly well written, or the technology isn't that great, but it's it's what somebody needs, and it addresses this very specific problem. So yeah, I was lucky in that I picked something that I felt like I had a unique appreciation for. But we still talk to our customers all the time. So here's another advice I could give to somebody is like, if you work with your customers and take their suggestions, in a lot of cases, they'll pay for you to add a feature that they want. So you can use that as the funding to drive your company forward. I was kind of afraid to do that at first. Like, they're already paying me. I don't want to ask for more money. But we got to a point where there was so many requests. And then there was also a problem of people would ask for stuff, but I didn't know if they were serious or not. So when I started like saying, okay, if you want me to ask to add this, it's going to cost $1,000. That would clarify and crystallize everybody's thinking, right? And they'd be like, okay, well, yeah, actually, probably we don't need that. Or they'd be like, yeah, totally, let's go. And then I know they're serious. So that was a big evolution of getting that system in place. And it's good for everybody. Like, they get what they want. It increases their engagement with the product, right? It advances. We always look at it, is this a good idea or not? Is something other people would want to use? Because if it's super niche, we might say no. But that co-development, especially in software, can be a great thing if you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, if people are trying to pay you money for something, you better find a way to give it to them.
Exactly. So now that's actually become a plus. It's like you can sign up with Bizinta. And if there's like a feature that is very particular to your company that would help you and like save you, I don't know, 20 hours a month in time, you can have it. We can make it for you. Right. And I have, dozens of customers that will say, yeah, you pay them, it gets done, they like knock it out. And you're not like waiting 6 years for some feature that they promised you. So, which is a story that one of our customers told about their previous provider. Yeah, we waited 6 years and they never did it. So we switched. It's funny how long it takes for someone to get fed up though, right? They're like, okay, they're 5 years. At 5 years, they're like getting kind of annoyed, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. I guess what's new for 2025? What are you guys looking to do? Any
I
big
love this
goals?
question.
And
Yes.
how do you plan to get there?
Yeah. So we're adding AI this year. I've been kind of an AI skeptic in the sense that like the hype is like out of control versus what you could do with it. And people kept saying, oh, you have to add some AI, you have to add some AI, you're going to get left behind. I'm like, well, I don't want to just like slap it on there
Yeah.
for no reason. What we're going to do is we have a really cool reporting system that we sort of tongue in cheek call the mother of all reports, MOAR, or more, the more reporting system, which is you can like take anything in Bizinta and mush it together and report on it. So for example, you could take your schedule. So you have 6 months out, this is where everyone's going to work, how many hours they're going to work there. You could take that, combine it with the billing rates from the billing system. Now you have a forecast of booked revenue, right? And so instead of you having to go to at least 2 systems and try and like bring this data together, you could push a button and see it right in 10 seconds. So that's super cool. And so people love this, but this reporting system, the more report, is so complicated, right? Like there's hundreds of things you can use and different ways you can manipulate the data and everything. So we were going over this, and my lead engineer, who's a genius, he was like, look, what we'll do is we'll train the AI how to make these reports. So you can ask it in English. It will make the report for you, because we didn't want to like take our customers' data and move it into somebody else's AI system, right? Because that's like sensitive, right? Data. And then it's even impractical there. So he's like, no. We'll keep the data. We'll have the AI understand how to make the reports. And then you say, I want to report, show me the top 5 clients by revenue in 2024, whatever. And then it will go in there like, oh, I know exactly how to make this report for you, right? And if we don't quite get it right, it will be like so close they could go in and tweak it. When they have to like start from a blank sheet of paper, basically, then that's really intimidating. We do have some customers that have learned how to use that and they love it. They're like in their eye and all these different things, right? But it's just so intimidating that I think having the AI there will like it accessible basically to everybody.
Yeah, that's so cool. I know a little bit about this because like my dad's software company, he's building an AI system into their platform that you can ask it to pull up information. It's kind of the same idea, and I think that's exactly what people have wanted but didn't know they needed. Like
Right.
having an
Exactly.
assistant for your platform. Even like onboarding is easy now. You can maybe find a way to ask the agent or the more or whatever AI system you have, like, how do I do this? Because I think part of the problem with software is there's so many features and you don't want to overwhelm people, right? With the
Exactly.
functionality
Yes.
and getting them figuring it out. So if you have a assistant right there that is trained on how to use everything and you can tell it what to do and then ask it, oh, is there a way of doing this? And then it'll just tell you. And I think that's like the future of software that I see in a lot of AI
Right.
applications is it's like an agent embedded into the software that knows how to use it. And your role now is to just tell it what you want and it gets it for you kind of. But
Correct. Right. So
yeah,
it's a more comfortable interaction because you feel like you're talking to a person that like, okay, where do I have to click? And I have to understand this giant menu that has 300 options
oh
on
my
it and everything.
God.
Right. It's so powerful and it's overwhelming for people. So then I was sold. I was like, okay, this this iteration or this form of AI for Bizinta is going to be a huge win. And we're going to like, of course, blast it out there, right? That we have this because our competitors are all pretty stodgy, and haven't really been innovating. And so we feel like this is something that like will catch people's attention, right? You can
That's
have
super
AI
exciting.
and then we
Yeah,
can do here. You want to know this about your company? Bam,
there you
there it
go.
is, right? It just can tell you. You can just interrogate the reporting engine and get whatever information you want out of it. So I want a graph. I want just answer my question, or I want, build a report for me that I can look at. So super excited about that. So yeah, we're so backlogged with customer requests. I'm like, I have to like battle to like get it on the schedule, right? So we have hundreds of customer requests because it seems like the more features we add, the more things people think of that we could be doing. Well, if you could do this, you could do this other thing. And
Yeah.
then once we do that other thing, they're like, what about this other thing? I'm just like, this is healthy, but we have limited bandwidth.
Yeah. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
good
And
problem
then
to have.
that's much better than everyone's like, or it's, Bazinta's Bazinta, right?
Yeah.
Like if someone says that, I would be mortified. We heard about one of our competitors where they got 3 months into the onboarding and they bailed out. They're like, this onboarding is not going well at all. We're pulling the plug on it. And I was like, oh my God, if that ever happened to me, I might go out in the yard and hang myself, right? I would feel so bad, I would be despondent. And I guess, their whole sales philosophy is different. It's like, we're just going to like ram people through, right? And some of them are going to like fall out the sides or whatever. We're like, how do we figure out, how to like scoop these people up, right? As they drop out. Ideally, I want every single customer to love our system. So that's my goal. That's how I run things. Not like I want every single customer to be trapped and can't leave and we'll just have to keep sending us money, right?
Yeah. That's an awesome mission, though. I think that's what any customer would hope the owner is
Right.
thinking.
That's the kind of company you'd want to buy something from, right? Like all
Exactly.
they think about is how to
Yeah.
make you happy. So
Well, that's really exciting. And I'm
yeah.
really thankful for you coming on. So, is there anywhere people can get in contact with you if maybe they've been blown away and they're really interested in
Sure, sure.
finding out
Yeah,
more?
it's www.bizinta.com. That's it. You can go there. It's everything about the product. You can click a button and get a demo. Even if you just want to see it and just like, hey, I'm curious, what like the state of the art is, or maybe, I'm at 10 right now and I want to know what kind of system I want to start looking at when I double or triple in size. Like we'd love to just demo that. So it's all on the website. You can go on there. Like I said, there's a pricing calculator. We're not doing any like call us for a quote kind of thing. You can see exactly what it's going to cost and you can ask questions. We have a real person is actually monitoring the website. So you can ask questions. You're not going to get a robot that like spits out, stuff from the marketing brochure or whatever. Even though we sell software, it's very human connected kind of thing. There's a real person. I can tell you a really funny story. Like, somebody they went on and they asked a question, and then our person like ended up calling them, I guess, and they were like, "You're a real person," because they thought, the little bubble down there, they thought it was an AI, right? And so they didn't realize they were actually talking to a real person the whole time. So anyway, yeah, I'll say it again: www.bizinta. It's Bizinta. So it sounds like Bazinga, So that's like sort of the excitement that we have, but it's the name is like biz, so biz for business, and inta for integration. Apparently everyone tells me they don't make that connection, but hopefully that will help people remember the biz and then inta.com. So come and check us out.
Sweet. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you, and I had a lot
Thank
of
you so
fun.
much, Christina. Yeah, it's great talking to you.